Hi, welcome to Simple Training with Tanaz. Today we are going to study about musical instruments name. We call this name as accordion. Next, we call this as bagpipes. We call this musical instrument name is banjo. We call this instrument name as bongo drums. Next, we call this as bugle. Next, we call this instrument as cello. Shehnai. In English, we call this as clarinet. Next, jinja. In English, we call this as cymbal. Next, we call this as drums. Next, we call this as electric guitar. Next, basuri. In English, we call this as flute. We call this as French horn. We call this instrument as guitar. We call this as harmonica. Veena. In English, we call this as harp. Next, we call this as keyboard. We call this instrument as maracas. Next, we call this as organ. Next, we call this as pan-flute. Next, we call this instrument as piano. Next, we call this as saxophone. Next, turai. In English, we call this as trombone. Next, we call this as triangle. We call this instrument as trumpet. Next, we call this instrument as tuba. Guitar. In English, we call this as ukulele. Next, sarangi. In English, we call this as violin. Next, xylophone. In English, we call this as xylophone.